Welcome everyone to the Sephira Center of Shamanism, where we break down the ancient esoteric practices of shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It is an honor to have you here. Thank you for joining me once again. Be sure to check out my Patreon, first link within the description of this video, should you have interest in working with me. You will find lots of different tiers that are available on this Patreon that give you different levels of access to various different types of exclusive content and different levels of access to me. The first two tiers are the most popular and give you access to the primary exclusive content, over 300 pieces of exclusive content at this moment in time, with new content uploaded multiple times each week. You will find lots of advanced occult initiatory systems, as well as in-depth guidance on how to begin your alchemical journey. Tier 3 and higher also give you the opportunity to join powerful occult training and initiation webinars, and work with me more closely through one-to-one mentoring. Access to the Patreon starts at just £20 per month, and I upload multiple times each week. I look forward to seeing you there. Definitely check that out. So today we are going to be discussing one of my favourite topics within occultism and the esoteric world in general. We are going to be discussing the truth about crossing the abyss. Now, crossing the abyss marks one of the most powerful and pivotal alchemical endeavours that a practitioner can embark on. But it's important to understand that this is a highly individual and complex process and is misinterpreted by many practitioners. Many practitioners approach the abyss in a very foolish way. They approach it as something that needs to be transcended, something that needs to be overcome. But in reality, it is an advanced technology that has the role of dispersing predefined identity. The abyss is an advanced dispersion-based technology that is here to be embraced and is here to be seen as your ally. Not as something to fight, not as something to endure, but something to actually sink into and welcome. The abyss is a state of being, a liminal space that is not one thing or the other. It is not darkness, it is not light, it is not masculine, it is not feminine, it is not this state that you attain. It is a fluid state of consciousness. What this really represents is what I call the state of Darth, and the state of Darth is about acknowledging that your soul is ultimately multiplicious and is fluid, which is completely different from how we have been programmed in society. Before you reach a point in your process whereby you are ready to cross the abyss, everything that you do feeds a predefined sense of self. You do this to feed your sense of self. You do that to feed your sense of self. You identify with different masks, roles, and personas that were given to you through societal conditioning and past trauma. You learn what your likes and dislikes are, and everything that you think that you know about yourself is already predefined. But when you reach a point within your initiatory process whereby you cross the abyss, you are ready. At this point, as long as you have done the necessary groundwork, you have reached the point where you are ready to actually let go of your predefined identity, the identity that was built through trauma fragmentation. You could call it your karmic identity that is built from your sense of self identifying with a set of traumas or a set of accumulated energy that was never actually yours in the first place. The process of crossing the abyss is whereby you are ready to let that go entirely and move into the gnosis of your higher self. To do so effectively and sustainably, you have to undergo both a literal and archetypal rupture of this predefined sense of self. Now, this archetypal and literal rupture normally happens through a set of literal trials that come at you through the world around you that are resonant with some of your deepest and most repressed trauma. These initiatory trials often come as a mirror of the core karma that your soul has come here to purify. at which point this archetypal experience has the very role of dislodging your predefined sense of self and sending your ego into a process whereby it is liquefied. And when I say liquefied, I don't mean that you're getting rid of the ego. It is a big misconception when people say that crossing the abyss destroys the ego. It does not. It actually liquefies it, makes it a more fluid state of consciousness, so that after you have crossed the abyss, you are not identifying with anything specific. You're not identifying with yourself as this is me, that is me. You are understanding that your soul is multiplicious and ultimately is an immensely fluid aspect of consciousness. This is the whole purpose of crossing the abyss. Now, crossing the abyss is something that you will encounter if you are undergoing initiation through different occult sciences, particularly if you are initiating through occult-based Kabbalah, the Sephiroth, the Tree of Life, or the Qliphoth, the Tree of Death. There are also other abyssal planes that appear within other types of esoteric systems as well. Within Yggdrasil, which is Norse-based pathworking, where you pathwork the 9 Norse worlds, with the addition of the abyssal plane, the Yawning Void. In that tradition, it is referred to as Ginnungagap. In the Enochian magic tradition, we are referring to the 10th ether, known as Zax, Z-A-X. In the Kabbalah, in both the Tree of Life and the Tree of Death, we are referring to Darth, the cut in the tree that separates the supernal triad, which is the higher self, from the lower aspects of the tree, which is symbolic of the lower self. Now, when you cross the abyss in Sephirothic terms, you are going to undergo a very different experience to if you undergo the abyssal crossing within Qliphothic terms. And this is a very core difference. When you cross the abyss in the Sephiroth, which is the Tree of Life, which is a form of angelic-based initiation, the purpose of this is to experience your deepest aspect of separation, whereby you're willingly invoking your purest aspect of separation consciousness so that you can witness the death of your predefined lower self, so that you can access the gnosis of your higher self. The Sephirothic Abyss works in the format of a gradual descent, whereby it's like a descent, you're descending into something deep, into a deep process of rupture, into dark matter, but you're also coming back up the other side. So it's a gradual descent and then a gradual process of emergence before you dissolve into the first sphere within the supernal triad, which is Binah. But if you cross the Qliphothic Abyss, what many people find is that the initiatory process will be much longer and will be much more heavy. For those who don't know, Darth, the Abyss, within Kabbalah, symbolizes knowledge. It is the hidden sphere of knowledge. So with the Sephiroth, you're descending into knowledge itself, knowledge that comes through paradox. In symbolic death of your old self, you gain knowledge of your higher self. Within the Sephirothic Abyss, you are gaining knowledge. Within the Qliphothic Abyss, you are experiencing the inversion of knowledge, which has the role of completely and permanently transfiguring your energy system to operate in a different way entirely. Darth in the Qliphothic concept or the Qliphothic context is the process of entering into Sitra Ara, whereby you have to witness the end of yourself bound to a light matter multiverse. This doesn't mean that you are leaving the light matter multiverse, but what you are experiencing is a kind of severing of your reliance on the light matter multiverse, and you are actually transitioning into what Kenneth Grant would call Universe B, which is the dark matter realm that encases the multiverse, the light matter multiverse. So in Qliphothic terms, you are not just descending into the abyss and rising back out of it, like you would in the Sephirothic Abyss, but you are actually throwing yourself straight into it and then popping out the other side within infinite dark matter intelligence, which means that your abyssal crossing is only the beginning of the dissolving process, which means that yes, it will rupture your core predefined identity, but the initiations that will follow within the Qliphothic context are going to be far more dissolving than the abyssal crossing itself. The abyssal crossing within the Qliphothic context is only the taster for what is beyond the tree, for what is actually beyond the tree's structure entirely, which is what you will enter into once you have finished the final Qliphothic sphere. So, as you can probably gather thus far, crossing the abyss is a highly misunderstood process. So this is exactly what we are going to be discussing today. I'm going to be discussing what the process of crossing the abyss actually looks like from the moment you enter into it to around the midpoint and to the process of emerging from it, based off of my own gnosis and based off of what I have seen with different people that I've worked with, as well as seeing my partner go through her abyssal crossing as well. I'm also going to be discussing some of the energetic benefits that come from successfully crossing the abyss as well. Absolutely essential topic to understand for anybody who is getting into occult-based initiation, or for those who have already crossed the abyss and who want to understand their process a lot more. Definitely stay tuned, as this is going to be very important as we dive in to crossing the abyss in detail. So first and foremost, we have to understand that crossing the abyss is a highly complex process that will not be fully understood by those who are going through the process. The abyss is not something which is supposed to be understood fully when you are going through it. It's something which is supposed to be embraced and is something that you are supposed to surrender fully to. This is simply because you are experiencing a massive dissolution of your ego, a massive dissolution of your predefined identity. So in a way, to try and logically understand what you are experiencing whilst you are crossing the abyss is going to be trying to limit the experience that you are actually having. And it's not going to work. Trust me, when you're in this space of dispersion, you are not going to be able to comprehend what it is that you're going through. And if you try to, that's when you're kind of moving against what the current is actually wanting you to do. What you have to do when you cross the abyss is enter a space of receptivity and be okay with what it is that you don't know. The whole point is that you're rupturing your predefined sense of self and who you thought you were as a person. Therefore, you have to allow yourself to enter into a very feminine space and a very receptive space and just allowing the process to unfold in its own way. This state of being is extremely aligned to the soul in its own right, simply because, as I mentioned before, the soul is multiplicious, the soul is fluid, it is not predefined, it is not binding itself to a set identity, it is an immensely fluid and receptive current. And this is exactly what you are learning to embody when you are going through this type of ego dissolution. Now, it is a very complex process simply because many who go through this will not have experienced an ego death which is like this. The amount of times that I've heard people say, oh, I must have crossed the abyss unconsciously because I went through trauma in my early years. Oh, I must have crossed the abyss because I had this challenging experience. Crossing the abyss is not something that you can undergo unconsciously. Yes, you do touch deep points of separation in your own evolutionary path unconsciously, experiencing a bereavement, experiencing a traumatic event. All of these things can be catalysts for pushing you into a space which is comparable to crossing the abyss, But the point is that the abyss is a very different process. You are entering an ancient esoteric technology that has the role of literally dispersing your predefined sense of self in order to move you into harmony with your higher self. This is not something that can be experienced unconsciously. It's something that you have to go into consciously, ritually, and it's something that you have to be prepared for. In Kabbalistic terms, before you cross the abyss, you have to have undergone the initiations through the lower 7 spheres. This is the case for both the Qliphoth, the Tree of Death, and the Sephiroth, the Tree of Life. And this point in the initiatory process through the Kabbalah is vastly different to anything else within the tree's structure, simply because you are experiencing the liminal space that is outside of the tree structure entirely. When you're going through the Sephiroth, you're experiencing a gradual transfiguration of your system brought on by the given sphere that you are initiating into. So you would start by initiating through the lower 7 spheres. Your system would be greatly transfigured into the image of those spheres, whilst you receive both subtle and sometimes direct initiatory trials that are there to help you master the qualities in which those spheres represent. But when you cross the abyss, it's going to be very difficult to track. You're going to enter a type of no man's land, and you're going to feel yourself evolving at an immense pace, but in a direction that you are not going to be able to foresee. Darth is an initiation that sheds linearity in its totality. So once you cross the abyss, you should be in a state whereby you are no longer striving for a set result. Okay, you're no longer striving for a state of being, striving for an end point, and you're no longer projecting your sovereignty onto something that you have yet to attain, as this is the purpose of Darth. Darth has the initiatory role of liquefying your sense of self to embody the true and authentic fluidity of the soul, which means once you have crossed Darth, you are not one thing. You are no longer the illusion of singularity. You are no longer this one sense of self that is doing everything in its power to maintain itself. You are instead embracing the true multiplicity of self and allowing yourself to be the vessel for the different fragments of your psyche that needs to express themselves. So it is the ultimate weakening of the veil between the conscious and unconscious mind to bring you into touch with some of the deepest and most repressed aspects of yourself. So understand that it is a massive process of initiation, but because of how individual it is, you must take everything that other people say about it when they are sharing their own experiences, take everything that other people say with a grain of salt, a bucket of salt, because your experience in the abyss is not going to be the same as anybody else's. There are people on YouTube that share their experiences crossing the abyss. They hold their black hood up like that and they're like, this is my experience crossing the abyss. And it's all dramatic and all of these different types of things, but your process is not going to be like that. Your process is going to be highly individual, and you are going to experience the exact things that you need to be able to grow past your sense of self that was never actually you in the first place. Darth ruptures your sense of self as a singular consciousness. It is there to expose the illusion of self. Okay, before Darth, everything is singular. Okay, your sense of self is intact. When you cross Darth, you're taking a hammer to the reflection of yourself, and you're witnessing the fracturing of that singularity, which was never actually a real concept in the first place. It was merely a hologram, a projection of what you have learnt to perceive as safe about yourself. It is a projection of what you have learnt through your past trauma and through your societal programming, what is safe to experience and expect from yourself. So understand here that what you are dispersing within your process of crossing the abyss was never actually you in the first place. It was a mirage. It was a hologram, and it was a sense of self that was built from suffering. And the most amazing thing about it is that the whole collective is completely oblivious to the fact that their sense of self has been created through immense pain. So Darth is the ultimate liberation process from this pain. But we have to be willing to let go of the identity structures that were built from pain so that we can learn to meet the emotional needs of our inner child. And what that basically means in occult terms is to connect to the true will. Okay, understand that Darth and the concept of crossing the abyss is shrouded within mysticism and esoteric based thought, but in reality it is deep trauma integration work. Okay, if we are to really approach it in a grounded way, Darth is an initiation that will weaken the veil, sensitize your nervous system, and bring a lot of repressed energy to the surface, and it can feel immensely heavy when you are going through the initiatory process. Okay, now, it is the same for other abyssal planes as well that are outside of the Kabbalistic tree. Okay, the Enochian ether, the 10th ether known as Zax, is a very similar concept to crossing the Clifothic abyss. Sorry, the Sephirothic abyss, because Enochian-based initiation and the Enochian keys are a form of celestial initiation and advanced angel magic. It is very similar in purpose to the concept of crossing the Sephirothic abyss, which means that you are there basically to experience separation in a very raw and intense format so that you can enter the gnosis of your higher self, enter the gnosis of your true will. Therefore, there are parallels between the Sephirothic abyss and the Enochian ether known as Zax. As I mentioned, there are other abyssal planes as well. In Arabian black magic, you have Jahannam, which is the hell structure. And within Jahannam, you have a realm called Sijin, which is the equivalent of crossing the abyss within that particular tradition. Within the Norse worlds, you have the concept of Ginnungagap, the yawning void, and is the place in which you return to allow yourself to become fertile soil. It is much the same with Darth. You are going there to become fertile soil. You cannot possibly, sustainably, take in the gnosis of your higher self without first experiencing the rupture of your illusionary sense of self. So it's the ultimate clearing of the vessel to be able to receive the gnosis and experience of who you actually are. So when it comes to Darth as a concept, there are two types of Darthic crossing. You have the Sephirothic abyss and you have the Clifothic abyss. The Sephirothic abyss is what you encounter when you initiate through the Tree of Life. And the Clifothic abyss is what you encounter when you move through the Clifoth, the Tree of Death. Both initiate very different purposes, okay? They have very different processes of initiation and ultimately are there to trigger different types of change. But you are somewhat descending into the same realm. So for those who don't know, Darth means knowledge. It is the hidden sphere of knowledge. So when you enter into Sephirothic Darth through the Tree of Life initiation, you're crossing from Chesed. After you've gone through the lower seven spheres, you're moving from Chesed into the Abyss in order to cross into Binah, the Divine Feminine, the Saturnian sphere. So this means that you are going to experience knowledge. But the paradox that is required to actually embody knowledge. The whole philosophy behind Darth is that in order to gain knowledge, you have to let go of illusion. So in other words, in death, you find knowledge. In the death of your old self, your vessel is cleared and you experience who you really are beyond that predefined construct or that set of predefined mechanisms. So you enter into the Sephirothic Abyss and you experience knowledge in its rawest form. It's a challenging process of initiation, but ultimately it is also immensely satisfying because you are developing deeper levels of knowledge as you're going through it. So the Sephirothic Abyss triggers a gradual descent. As you move down into the chasm, you experience a gradual fracturing of your predefined sense of self. You then reach a point where you stop at the bottom of the abyss and you kind of reach rock bottom in the process, whereby you're embodying the hanged man archetype. Okay, the old sense of self is gone, but you're no longer actually in a space whereby you know what it is that you're actually supposed to be doing in your life. No exaggeration. At this point in the Sephirothic Abyss crossing, you can experience a lot of deep confusion about what your purpose in life actually is. And that's the purpose of it, because you're shattering the mirage of linearity. You're shattering the illusion of a linear result. So in this space, you have to welcome a state that is resonant with the hanged man archetype, which is in between who you used to be and who you are now becoming. But the point is that who you are now becoming is not actually a singular concept, but is a fluid concept. So here, there is a lot of embracing of the unknown that is required. To be honest with you, what I've seen with people who have gone through the Sephirothic Abyss, it is a much more enjoyable experience than going through the Cliffothic Abyss. It doesn't mean that it's easy by any means. It is a very, very challenging process of initiation, and many people don't actually realize how challenging it actually is until much later in their process, once they've had time to actually process the initiation itself. So the Sephirothic Abyss will bring you a set of symbolic trials that will basically have the role of rupturing your karmic identity. These trials will resonate with your deepest trauma so that you can experience the death of who you thought you were. At which point, you will then begin to transition gradually. It's a very slow process. You will begin to transition into the gnosis of your higher self, which is represented by the supernal triad, the higher three spheres. This is where you are tasting knowledge, okay? In the Sephirothic Abyss, you are tasting the very essence of knowledge itself, which comes through pure potential. You are tasting the void, and in doing so, you are tasting knowledge before it has been organized and comprehended into a solid form. It is an epic process of initiation. Whereas in the Cliffothic Abyss, you are entering the inverted Darth, which basically means that you are experiencing the inversion of knowledge. So this one can create a lot of deeper layers of confusion and dispersion for those who are going through it. So it's normal for those who are going through the Cliffothic Abyss to experience a lot of delusion, to have trouble actually remembering what the tree actually is. No exaggeration. How you know that Darth is doing what it is supposed to be doing when you're in the Cliffothic Abyss is when you start thinking, is the Cliffoth even a real concept? Is this initiation even a real concept? Have I just imagined this whole thing? Is it just a figment of my imagination? Is it just yet another mirage? Okay, the Cliffothic Abyss is a very significant process of dissolving, simply because you're not only letting go of your predefined identity, but you are becoming an aspect of Darth itself. Whereas with the Sephirothic Abyss, you're crossing into it in order to basically exit the other side of it. Okay, you're crossing into it to reach what's on the other side. Whereas with the Cliffothic Abyss, you're kind of falling straight into it, and you are experiencing a permanent transfiguration of your field. Now, the best way to describe this transfiguration is basically a type of vampiric metamorphosis, whereby your energy body is changed in structure. Now, what this basically means is that when you're going through the Cliffothic Abyss, you are transitioning from having reliance on a predefined multiverse and a predefined existence into that of pure potential. This is the ultimate entrance into Sitra Ara, which is the other side, which is the void space, the optimal primordial chaos that birthed the multiverse of light matter that we are living within. So Darth in the Qliphothic context is much more significant simply because you are transfiguring your energy body to basically learn how to dwell outside of a reality that is predefined. You are actually exiting the multiverse in a sense. It doesn't mean that you're exiting this universe. You're basically taking your soul through a process whereby you are no longer reliant on this predefined reality and this predefined sense of self. Now, what comes with this is a more significant set of ruptures. Ruptures that have much more vivid experiences in day-to-day life and are resonant with, once again, similar to the Sephirothic Abyss, your core karma that your soul has come here to experience and ultimately master. So these symbolic ruptures are brought in through the experience around you so that you can actually transition beyond the constraints of that predefined sense of self. It is a very complex process. A very complex process that again is highly individual. But the purpose of the Qliphothic Abyss is to move you into Sitra Ara, which is the void space, the chaotic space which is outside of the multiverse itself. But what this really is in the Qliphothic context is the point of no return, whereby you are making the commitment fully to becoming a self-sustained being. Okay, and what that basically means is that your energy system is going to function differently. Okay, by default, our light body is operating from what we call a positively charged Fibonacci sequence, which means it's emanating outwards, meaning it's resonant more with the Sephiroth, the angelic current. It's an emanating principle. After Darth, you're experiencing a type of daemonic transformation whereby the flow of your energy is somewhat reversed, whereby now you are no longer emanating energy, but you are pulling energy in. So in other words, what is negative becomes positive and what is positive becomes negative. So in pulling energy in, you are actually having a greater impact on the environment around you. You're no longer sustaining yourself in the same way. You are now learning to sustain yourself as a being that is independent from the predefined multiverse. So it is an ultimate process of liberation, but the caveat here is that it's far from the end of the process. Many people frame the crossing of the abyss as the end of the process. Once you've crossed the abyss, then you've done the core of the work. In Qliphothic context, very, very wrong. It does not work like that at all. Crossing the abyss in the Qliphothic context is the rite of passage that's required to transfigure your energy body to become a feeder, to become a devourer, and to become a receiver. But you then have to learn how to operate permanently within that state. And this is where people struggle. It's after the abyss where people struggle to actually sustain themselves in that sense, okay? The abyss is far from the end. I don't feel the crossing of the abyss is the most difficult process in the initiation. I personally find that once you finish the final sphere of the Qliphoth, that's when the real challenges start to unfold, okay? That's where you enter the void, which is beyond the tree structure entirely, and you start to experience a more vast type of Da'arthic energy, which is so difficult to describe and so highly personal simply because it is shaped only by how you are perceiving it. So Darth in that context is simply a rite of passage that is supposed to open the way to a much deeper process of initiation that is going to start to unfold after you have completed the crossing. So when you cross the abyss, both sides of the abyss, when you cross the Sephiroth and the Qliphoth, you will encounter both a literal and archetypal entity, a concept being that is a personification of dispersion in its rawest form. And this being is known by two names. In fact, it's very much one being. It just has different aspects, has a masculine aspect and a feminine aspect. The masculine aspect resonant with the Sephiroth, the Tree of Life, is Shugal, and the feminine aspect resonant with the Qliphoth is Choronzon. I just refer to this being as Shugal Choronzon, simply because I feel that they are not really separate from each other. I feel like they are connected, and if you bring both of them into the space, if you evoke them, you can't really tell them apart. They are pretty much the same being. It's just Shugal has a slightly more masculine feel, and Choronzon is much more about openness and receptivity. But in my view, when you are encountering the abyssal crossing within both sides of the tree, you are encountering Shugal Choronzon in its totality. And this is the force that is responsible for orchestrating the abyssal trials that you are going to experience. This is the force that is responsible for bringing you the archetypal events within your day-to-day life that are going to trigger the rupture. But they will also test you through means of understanding that you are something much bigger than any set result that you are going to strive towards. Now, Shugal Choronzon have a very dissolving energy altogether. If you invoke them, it can create a very strong dissolving sensation, particularly for me around the head. They have a very strong presence even when you're not crossing the abyss. But how they test you is through paradox. It's important to understand that when you're entering into the abyssal realm, you are experiencing paradoxical liberation, which means you have to die in order to experience the rebirth. You have to experience the rupture before you experience the benefits of that rupture. Okay, and Shugal Choronzon test you in many different ways. Shugal Choronzon are basically going to test you through different layers of grandeur, thinking that you've come further than you have, and ultimately showing you how to surrender to your evolutionary process without actually knowing what the end result is going to be. Because many go into these initiatory processes with a predefined result in mind, and the purpose of Shugal Choronzon is to completely sever that entirely and show you how to operate without it. Because again, the process is all about releasing linearity in its rawest form. So these beings are present throughout your entire abyssal crossing. Now, when you enter the abyss, you will do so through a set initiatory ritual. When you enter the abyss, it will feel initially like not much is happening. Particularly when you enter the Qliphothic abyss, it will probably feel like, oh, not much is happening at all. You may not even feel the energy much at all. This is the thing. Void energy is very slow to work, okay? It will absorb into your system, but it is very slow moving, and Darth is a slow moving energy. It is not a quick process by any means. It is very slow, very gradual, and when you're really in the midst of the dispersion, that slowness can be quite triggering. So because of how slow the process is, it's very easy for the practitioner to get ahead of themselves. So because the first period after you have performed the initiatory ritual into Darth, typically the first couple of weeks are pretty uneventful. Okay, for me, when I entered into the Qliphothic Abyss, the first 2 weeks didn't really have much going on at all. I could feel like I was descending into something gradually, but in reality, I wasn't really feeling anything tangible. Okay, I was getting this mild dispersion-based sensation, but I wasn't really feeling much at all. And what I've seen with other people who have gone into their abyssal crossings is that it's not like you perform the ritual and then the next day you're in the midst of dispersion, it's a very gradual process. It's like you're being gradually sucked into a black hole. There are different stages of the process whereby you start to get drawn in. And the mere act of entering Darth is whereby you are entering into the field of the black hole, and you have to let yourself be pulled towards it. At which point, it is very, very, very common in this initial stage of crossing the abyss to think that you have crossed it already. Okay, I've seen this happen with multiple different people now, whereby they enter the abyss, and because nothing dramatic is happening within the first 2 weeks, they think that they've crossed it successfully. This is the first core trial that often comes through Shugal Choronzon, okay, is thinking that you have gone through the process when in reality the process hasn't actually started yet, okay. Darth is very slow, it's not quick. For everybody, Darth is a slow process of initiation. It's gradual descent. So you will start to feel, after that 2 weeks, you'll start to feel things gradually becoming more tangible, okay? And again, it's not really going to be a feeling that you can see, taste, or touch, or be able to say, right, this is definitely what's happening. It's going to feel very intangible, and that is the whole purpose of it. But when you reach around the 2 weeks to 1 month mark, this is normally where the rupture begins to happen, okay, with both the Sephirotic and the Cliffothic Abyss. But with the Sephirotic Abyss, it tends to be a little bit more subtle, whereas with the Cliffothic Abyss, it tends to be a lot more obvious from what I've seen with other people that have gone through this process, including myself. The Cliffothic Abyss tends to be more rupturous when it comes to bringing you literal experiences that are resonant with your past trauma, whereas the Sephirotic Abyss tends to be a little bit more internal. But what you experience really depends on what is necessary for you to experience in order for that rupture to be able to take place. But normally what happens is that an experience around the 2 weeks to 1 month mark of entering into the abyss, normally an experience that is resonant with your core past trauma that you experienced in your early years, is going to make its way into your physical experience. Sometimes it may happen psychologically, it may happen in the dream state, but normally you will get brought a literal situation. A situation that from an outsider's perspective looking in, it may not seem that dramatic at all. This is the thing. When other people describe their abyssal crossings, it's hard for somebody else to actually understand the severity of what it is that they're going through, because the trials that are being manifested are resonant only with the person that is going through it. This is why I say when somebody is sharing their experience with crossing the abyss, understand that your experience is not going to be the same. You may find parallels in it, but your experience will not be the same in terms of the nature of the trial that you're going to receive. So the best thing to do is just relax into the process and embrace the unknown. So once this archetypal trial comes in, it can get pretty intense when it comes to Shugal Choronzon actually communicating with you through the world around you. Okay, people can be used as vessels for this energy. I've experienced this myself, where people around me are being used as vessels for this powerful archetype, and therefore people around you can start responding in ways to you that are resonant with your past trauma, at which point it is your job to allow that process to happen, but also expose the illusion that's in that experience, okay? It's not unusual for the Darthic trial to manifest in the form of something that tries to pull you into an old pattern, okay? Something that tries to pull you into an old identity structure. For me, I'm not going to explain the core trials that I went through within my Abyssal Crossing. I've got this experience on my Patreon for those who are interested in the Cliffothic initiation section. But what manifested for me were numerous scenarios whereby people were used as vessels, and they were literally saying things to me that I was scared to hear. Okay, so one of them came through a student who was learning with me shamanism, who started literally just saying how I'm not in my authenticity, how I'm terrible at what I do, all of these different things. And this was mirroring the projection that I received as a child. It also came through in the form of other scenarios whereby I was blamed for stealing money and other things like this, like just many different experiences that were resonant with the core trauma that I experienced in my early years. Okay, way more than that, but this is just an example. Okay, you are likely going to experience archetypal trials that come in as an attempt to pull you into an old pattern that you thought that you had made peace with. But this is where the dispersion has to take place, where you have to learn that that is not you, that that is not your sense of self, that that was never your sense of self in the first place. And ultimately, you discern by understanding what is inducing the suffering. Okay, what is bringing you the suffering? What is bringing you the same perpetual crap as what you experienced as a child? At which point, that is what you are being taught to let go of within your abyssal crossing. Okay, so once the core ruptures have occurred, you will find yourself entering a kind of no man's land. And this is similar to what I described with the Sephirothic Abyss, where you're entering the sort of hanged man space, where you're kind of in the middle of who you used to be, but you're no longer who you're becoming. This is what I call the fertile soil stage. Okay, whereby you've experienced the core rupture, but the emergence has no longer has not actually happened yet. And this is where a lot of surrender is required. This is where it's very easy to try and reconstruct what you have lost. It's very easy to fall back into harmful coping strategies because there's nothing that you can really hold on to that's tangible. Okay, and this is where people can again move into illusions. Okay, the ego can very easily latch onto an illusion that it's done the abyssal crossing and it's completed the abyssal crossing. And how you know that somebody has successfully crossed the abyss, particularly the Cliffothic abyss, is if they are in that fluid space. In other words, if they're still striving towards a set result, then they have not successfully crossed the abyss in that respect. And it's here which really requires a lot of surrender. And this is where you really have to sit in Darth until you're absolutely ready to move to the next stage of the initiation. Okay, it's very easy to experience the rupture and then enter into the next spheres. But in reality, you have to sit here and embrace the discomfort, sit and embrace the sensitizing of your system, and actually learn how to welcome this infinite state of consciousness. Because particularly if you've gone into the Cliffothic abyss or you're going to be crossing the Cliffothic abyss, this is a very important trial for showing you how to sit and be present with yourself. And again, you're not going to do it perfectly. Okay, nobody is perfect. It's not a punishment initiatory process. It's not there to punish you. It's there simply to help you exit suffering. Okay, the abyss is all about exiting suffering. It is not this dark experience whereby you have to fight the beast. Ignore all of the white magicians who say that they have had to fight the beast. Don't try and fight the beast. Don't try and fight what you are experiencing in Darth. You have to embrace everything that you are experiencing in Darth. Feel everything with as much enthusiasm as possible. Embrace the despair. Embrace the liberation. And understand that this is a process that will benefit you as you move through it. It will benefit the later stages of your initiation. Okay, and Darth is going to take you a few months, okay, maybe longer. This is the thing. Darth is not a quick process by any means. You have to relax into it, you have to surrender to it, and you have to be absolutely ready to move to the next phase of initiation. Otherwise, you will disorientate yourself after. Okay, and this is what I've seen happen with a few people as well. Okay, they think that they have crossed the abyss, they experience the benefits of crossing the abyss, but then things go wrong later down the line because they have not actually crossed the abyss. They have not actually relaxed fully into the process. And how you know that you've crossed the abyss successfully is when you start to experience yourself being put back together after you've gone through that core rupture. Okay, and the emergence phase from the abyss is whereby you gradually start to feel more centered. The dissolution has passed, but the uncertainty is still there. Okay, the dissolution has passed. You're no longer dissolving, but ultimately you're in a space whereby you don't know what is to come. Okay, in other words, you know that you're on the right path, but you don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know what your new self is going to bring you. You don't know what is actually on the other side of the abyss. That is a sign that you have crossed successfully when you are no longer in the dissolution, whereby you are in a quite a calm space, calm and integrated space, but whereby you are no longer attached to what is to come, whereby you are no longer attached to the next phase of the initiation that you need to move into, and you are no longer attached to a set result. This is the core recipe for crossing the abyss successfully, and that's how you know that you've crossed it successfully. So one thing that I will say as well is going back to the core thing that I just said around not fighting the process. Many people, and particularly people on the right-hand path, many people frame the abyss as something that needs to be fought with. Okay, do not fight Choronzon. Do not fight the Beast of 666, because that's what it is. The Beast of 666 is Shugal Choronzon. Do not fight it. Okay, don't even try to fight this process because it's not going to work, quite simply. Okay, fighting the abyssal crossing is like trying to fight with your own inner child and your own shadow. It will not work. And you can fight it without even realizing you're fighting it. This is the thing. You have to allow it and you have to trust it. This is an advanced technology that knows what it is doing, and it is you. All you are encountering in the abyss is a transition into your truth, a transition into the truth that you've always had within you, but you've had layers and layers and layers of predefined sense of self, of predefined masks, roles, and personas that have been stopping you from actually tapping into that true potential. So to put it simply, crossing the abyss is the ultimate rite of passage out of suffering. But it is not the end of the process. It is only the beginning. Once you have crossed successfully and you move into the later stages, you will experience a very positive shift within your energy. Okay, and this will come with a lot of challenge as well, don't get me wrong. Okay, crossing the abyss comes with many different benefits, many benefits, and it largely depends on the side that you are crossing. With both abyssal planes, the core benefit is the liquefied ego that I spoke about, the liquefied sense of self, the embracing of the multiplicity of self, and you're no longer limited by singularity. Okay, you are embracing your true multifaceted nature, and this is in harmony with the soul. So the core benefit of crossing the abyss is moving into the core fluidity of the soul, with all abyssal planes, with both the Sephirotic abyss and the Cliffotic abyss. The core benefits of the Sephirotic abyss is that you are ultimately emptying your vessel, okay? And that vessel is empty, and now this is a state of being that you can enter back into willingly if you are wanting to experience that dissolution again, okay? And it won't be dissolution to the same extent, but you can call on the Da'arthic energy to enter into that space of fertile soil in order to allow the continuous rebirth to extend from that soil. So what comes through crossing Darth is a very particular ability to return to that space of receptivity, and what comes with this is a very particular manifestation ability. In releasing the linear result, you are going to be able to manifest reality at a much more effective rate. Okay, and this happens entirely paradoxically. Okay, Darth shows you that most of the manifestation community is total bollocks because it's built off of trying to attach to an end result and a state of linearity. The very state of linearity that Darth is responsible for dissolving. So if you are removing the result, you are entering a space of optimal receptivity whereby you are pulling in your reality through nothing more than resonance alone. And this happens through the detachment from the result. Understanding that the future that you are trying to strive towards is a total mirage. It does not exist. At which point, your ability to create reality through that detachment from the illusion of an end result is going to massively refine because you are no longer projecting your self-worth into a singular outcome. You are no longer binding your self-worth and your life force to an outcome that has yet to take place, because you know that you are already it. So the core benefit of Darth is that manifestation ability, the ability to bring about change in your life through the detachment of the core end result. What also comes as a benefit to Darth is oneness with dark matter energy. Okay, if you are approaching Darth from the perspective of integration, particularly the Cliffothic Abyss, that transfiguration of your energy body is very important for actually becoming one with your shadow. Okay, merging with your shadow. At which point, I believe if you have done this process properly, you are no longer going to need any external psychic protection. Now, this is where I can rub a lot of people up the wrong way when I say that psychic protection becomes obsolete. If you are genuinely doing the work and you are genuinely merging with dark matter energy and you are genuinely taking your shadow self as a part of you, you have nothing to fear outside of you. Okay, at which point intrusive forces, intrusive entities become part of your field. They absorb into your field naturally if you have approached this from the purpose of genuine integration and individuation. Because Darth is the rupturing of the separation point that is keeping you separated from the opportunity to integrate. Okay, so as those identity layers fall away and rupture entirely, then what is left is your oneness with your shadow, your oneness with dark matter energy, at which point you do not need protection from anything. Okay, if you've really done the work, you do not need psychic protection after you have done this process, particularly the Cliffothic Abyss, because you will have gone through such a significant transfiguration. And especially if you enter into the realms which are beyond the Cliffoth, the trans-Cliffothic realms, which are even more Darthic and even more dissolving in nature, you are going to become one with your shadow even more. At which point, as long as you are not scapegoating your shit and projecting it onto a curse or an entity or whatever that is, you're not going to need psychic protection. Okay, you will be able to bring about what you want, what you need, if you have gone through this process properly. This is largely built off of the concept of being the vampire. Entity comes towards you that appears hostile. What does it represent within you? And with this transfiguration to your energetic body that happens once you cross Darth in the Cliffothic side, what's stopping you from absorbing that entity into you? Somebody throws a curse at you, what is stopping you from absorbing that curse into your field and translating it, transforming it, alchemizing it into food and nourishment for your system? This resides in your ability to face chaos head on. Darth teaches you how to not perpetuate in chaos and trauma, and how to face it willingly without getting stuck in it. At which point, if you have mastered this effectively, which is an ongoing process, then you are going to be able to face anything with grace. This is the whole point. Okay, if you embrace this fluidity and you embrace your oneness with dark matter energy, with your own shadow, you do not need to fear anything outside of you. This is what real sovereignty is. Anybody who is still in that space of blaming archons, entities, curses, and they claim to have crossed the abyss and they claim to have gone beyond the Qliphoth and all of these things, they have not done the work. It is as simple as that, because they are still within that space of blaming. That is not a sign of somebody who has successfully crossed the abyss. Crossing the abyss should come with a state of understanding that you are one with everything. This is the whole point. You are one with your darkest aspects of self. Okay, every spirit mirrors something within you. Every encounter mirrors something within you. The rupture that happens in Darth, if you scapegoat that, then you're not going to be able to undergo that trial successfully, and it's going to re-traumatize you. But if you take it as a part of you, that's what allows you to transcend it and integrate it. So Darth comes with many energetic benefits that really require one to be in their own sovereignty. And if somebody claims to have crossed the abyss and they're still in the space of blaming the darkness, still in the space of blaming the devil, i.e. most right-hand path practitioners, or they're in a space still where they require protection from external entities or external curses, they have not done the work. They have not successfully merged with Darth, and they are stuck and perpetuating in their own projections. Darth shows you that you are not limited to singularity. You are multiplicious. You are multidimensional. Your potential and your sovereignty is extremely vast. This is what crossing the abyss is all about. This is the truth about crossing the abyss. Understanding your sovereignty, facing your shit, facing chaos, alchemizing it without perpetuating in it. Understanding how vast your consciousness is beyond predefined identity. Absolutely essential to understand. But I think that is just about everything that I need to discuss in today's topic. Massive topic. I love talking about Darth, but I think that's everything that I need to say. On my Patreon, there is a lot more information on Darth. You will find also chants and hymns to invoke the beast of Darth, as well as rites of initiation into Darth when you are ready to reach that point in your process. But for now, thank you guys. Be sure to hit like and subscribe if this video was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.